KPS Gill, Chief Advisor of the IHF, has come out and said that Hockey India should immediately restrict Pakistan players to play in the proposed league to protest the brutalities committed by Pakistani army and Pakistani terrorists. Should sports be linked with politics and diplomacy? Should India send a message to Islamabad by asking these Pakistani hockey players to pack up and go back home? Joining us on this face-off is Rahul Kanwal, spokesperson for the Shiv Sena, the party that is demanding that the Pakistani players immediately leave India. For a government point of view, a Congress point of view, we got Manishankar Iyer, a member of parliament from the Rajya Sabha, and Ambassador KC Singh are our guests this evening. I want to go across first to Rahul Kanwal, because many would argue, Rahul, that the Pakistani hockey players are not at fault. What happened along the line of control was barbaric, but it had nothing to do with the Pakistani hockey players, and therefore they should not be punished for a crime which they have not committed. Why do you want the Pakistani hockey players to go back?
Well, Rahul, to my mind, I always thought it is the responsibility of the government and the duty of the government to uphold the dignity, respect, and the whole honor of our country. Unfortunately, they've not lived up to that, and therefore now it's upon every individual citizen and organizations to ensure that this is done. With regards to Pakistan, we have tried every possible measure. We've given in to bilateral talks of the highest level. We've given in to giving them the most favored nation status. We've had the Samjhauta Express. We've tried everything possible. But Pakistan doesn't seem to come around with its old tactics of promoting terrorism in India and cross-border infiltration. Having said that, I think time has come when we act decisively, and we do tell Pakistan that unless they bend their ways, no sorts of ties are going to be there between the two countries. And rightly so, because on one hand you are having the Indian soldiers being brutally killed on the borders of this country. You've had terrorist attacks in this country where thousands of innocent citizens have lost their lives. And on the other hand, we are allowing Pakistani players, artists to come in and use our soil for commercial purposes. I mean, they are coming here, they are enjoying themselves, they are earning money from our country and going back.
Why should we allow it? That's the question the Shiv Sena is asking. I want to put that question to Manishankar Iyer. Obviously, we can't risk a nuclear escalation. A military option is fraught with several dangers. Therefore, we have to find diplomatic and other means of communicating our displeasure to Pakistan. And given the current situation, Mr. Iyer, many would argue that sending the hockey players back would be one step for India to communicate its grave displeasure with the barbarism that's been perpetrated by the Pakistani army along the LOC. Why should these players make money in India when their army is causing so much trouble for us?
I think it would be very, very unfortunate if the kind of view expressed by Mr. Kanwal just now were to be our official foreign policy. Because the Shiv Sena has not asking only now for the return of these hockey players. They have been digging up pitches, they've been causing trouble. They often take matters entirely into their own hands. I don't think they behave in a responsible way. And therefore, for the argument that he basically made, that we should just send them back because there's been a disgraceful incident on the border, I want us to put it in perspective, is in line with the Shiv Sena policy of trying to get India to disengage from Pakistan. And the wording that he used shows that he is in favor of disengagement, because he says give in to them when we have bilateral talks. We're not giving in to them on having bilateral talks. Bilateral talks take place bilaterally. We have every right to say whatever we want to them and in as strong terms as possible, but it doesn't amount to bending on your knees.
No, but given what's happened at the flag meeting today, given the way Pakistan has been misusing India's benign behavior, given the fact that our soldiers have been beheaded and Pakistan is not in the least bit apologetic, many would argue, Mr. Iyer, that your government's policy of engagement with Pakistan, of appeasing Pakistan, has actually got us nowhere. The failure lies with the manner in which your government has constructed its Pakistan policy.
I would respectfully disagree with you. There have been huge achievements as a result of engagement with Pakistan, and I really don't see what the alternative to engagement is, given that, like Siamese twins, we are joined at the hip between India and Pakistan. I think it will be highly irresponsible to allow a situation to deteriorate where we reach a point where more soldiers are beheaded and where there are more soldiers killed. I don't think the purpose of diplomacy is to move towards war. I don't agree with Clausewitz at all that war is a continuation of diplomacy by other means. War is the consequence of diplomacy collapsing. And war has never solved any problem. And anybody who belongs to the Gandhian tradition, to which the Shiv Sena does not belong, would agree that we should have jaw-jaw rather than war-war. And
no, but what happens in a situation when we belong to a Gandhian tradition, Ambassador KC is saying, and clearly our opponents, our neighbors do not. They are being highly Talibani in their actions, and yet Manishankar Iyer suggests that sending the Pakistani players would be penalizing them for no fault of theirs, sir.
Well, firstly, the land of Gandhi, long before Gandhi, also had Chanakya. So there are many streams which can be streams of thought which can be adopted. Well, I would position myself somewhere in the middle because we realize that there is a civilian government which we can engage in Pakistan. But we also must realize that there's an army and army in league with militants, or parts of the army in league with militants, which these civilians are not able to control. Therefore, we have to have a smart approach, and the smart approach is what we did with cricket. You don't send the cricket team home, but certainly don't let Miyadad enter. So I think all the Pakistani hockey players, we should look at their sponsorship, their employers, and see if there's any link to the Pakistani army, because after all, a quarrel is the Pakistani army. And therefore, if we want to have pinpointed sanctions, if you see the sanctions, even UN sanctions against Iran, they're going after certain elements in the Revolutionary Guards in Iran. So they have to be what we call smart sanctions, not bland sanctions, not blind engagement, but certainly very smart retaliatory measures which do not upend your entire relationship, but at the same time send a signal to those erring in Pakistan that their path is not either not ignored by us, but there will be countervailing reaction.
You're making a distinction between the two views on the extreme, and I want to get Rahul Kanwal back on the middle path. You don't have to bend in an unending fashion, lie prostrate before Pakistan, and you don't need to press the nuclear trigger either. You have to resort to other diplomatic and limited military means. That is what Ambassador KC Singh is suggesting. There's not an either or. You don't have to send players back who are not guilty in any way. You have to find the right calibrated response as opposed to generating war hysteria.
Well, Rahul, you know what, insofar as foreign policy is concerned, when does a nation start taking you seriously? When a neighboring nation has been indulging in the activities which Pakistan has been indulging in, when will they stop doing it? They'll stop doing it when you send a hard message across. Till date, we have failed to send that hard message across, and therefore we've always projected ourselves to be a soft target for terrorism or such activities we've witnessed in the last week. Therefore, I think it is our failure to have not sent that message across. And in that pursuit itself, I think time has come where we tell Pakistan, which is admittedly a failed state and a bankrupt state, that if they don't mend their ways, they are also going to suffer commercially. And that's probably the time when people of Pakistan personally start suffering commercially. They'll probably enforce upon their government to mend their ways. And that's probably the only hope that we see today. And insofar as Pakistan's stability is concerned, there is absolutely no doubt that a stable Pakistan is in the interest of India and all the other neighboring countries. But for that sake, you cannot, we have already prejudiced our internal security as well as the interest of our nation by tolerating this nuisance for such a long time. And now time has come that we really act decisively and swiftly. I do remember the Home Minister of this country making a statement after the 26/11 attacks that if Pakistan ever acts in this fashion again, we shall act swiftly and decisively. I'm still waiting for the government of India to act swiftly and decisively.
Mr. Iyer, that's the problem, because the government each time seems to be in a forgive and forget mode. They want to move on. No penalties are ever imposed on Pakistan, no matter what the provocation, which is why they do Kargil, they do 26/11, they resort to beheading our soldiers, because they know after a while the Indian government will come back and hug them. There will never be any penal provisions, there will never be any penalty imposed on Pakistan. It always comes back to normal, so there is no disincentive, there is no incentive to behave.
The penalties that you are talking of, I don't know what they are. If the penalty involves escalating the conflict, if you think that you're the headmaster and the student can only take a whack on his bottom and not do anything about it, you're misconstruing the relationship between two sovereign nations. If we, on the basis of what has just happened, decide to break the conversation, send off the Pakistani hockey players, leave it to the army to determine the kind of response that they're going to give, we will be in an armed conflict with Pakistan. And I think the purpose of diplomacy is to prevent such an armed conflict. I appreciate the position that KC Singh has taken, that yes, this is also the nation of Chanakya, but our freedom movement was not fought on Chanakyan principles, it was fought on Gandhian principles. But you can give a smart response, provided we get a clear idea as to what does he mean by that smart response. In the case of the United States and Iran, they are using an enormous amount of clout to get virtually nowhere. Where have they got as a result of all these sanctions that they've imposed? It's all very well to use your position as a bully to try and kick around people, but people respond. And because my experience was Vietnam, and perhaps his is Iran, in Vietnam I saw a virtually unarmed people totally defeat the world's biggest superpower, even then in the 1960s. I think diplomatic relations should be conducted on a more civilized basis. And while it is very, very good to condemn what happened on the border on television, it's much more important that we condemned what happened directly face to face with them. And we achieved nothing by saying that we are going to show them how strong we are. We did it in 2001 or 2002 rather, after the attack on Parliament in December. And what happened? We sent 1 million men to the frontier and we brought 1 million men back. You have to engage with your neighbor, because the alternative to engagement is eternal conflict. The Shiv Sena is very fond of conflict. The Congress does not want conflict, it wants harmony. And I think it would be highly irresponsible to run foreign policy on the basis of a tsunami of emotion.
You're saying don't get carried away by a tsunami of emotion. I want to get Ambassador KC Singh first and then Rahul Kanwal to respond to what we've heard Mr. Iyer say. Ambassador KC Singh, you first.
Yes, now when we are talking of smart, I give one example. I said Miyadad being chased away from India sent a signal. It's not a signal to Pakistan. It's a signal to those forces in Pakistan that you cannot be having a relationship with somebody like Dawood Ibrahim and then expect India to behave in a normal manner. Certainly some red lines have to be there in terms of your behavior. Now you take this one. I'm saying look at the background of the hockey players who are in India, Pakistani hockey players. Are any of them employed by the army or any of the army foundations or any trusts, etc., supporting those players? If there is any one of those, certainly he should be sent back, simply to send a message to the Pakistani army that they'll be that their behavior is unacceptable and that they would be treated as pariahs internationally. And that also sends a signal internationally. When we are dealing with Pakistan, we must understand that it's not only bilateral, there is a certain global public opinion which exerts pressure. Kargil withdrawal would not have taken place unless the Americans had taken a stand and told them, and the Chinese for that matter, had taken a stand and told Pakistan that this was just not acceptable internationally. So burying these issues and simply talking behind closed doors is not good enough. I think we have to move on this serious breach of the Geneva Convention and have Pakistani army arrest those people who have done it, and therefore at least show that it's a rogue element in the Pakistan army and not sanctioned by the army chief.
And they've not so far, Mr. Iyer, even admitted that the Pakistani establishment was in any way responsible for the beheadings. They pretend as if it didn't happen at all, that lightning came and struck and that's how 2 of our soldiers died. How do you deal diplomatically with an enemy who refuses to accept facts. KC Singh is saying, let them find out who did it, take action against him, even if they are irregulars, even if they are Pak terrorists. But unless there is admission, how will there be any action?
Well, I'm afraid you cannot force them into an admission. And if you use the Geneva Convention route, which I've been hearing Ambassador KC Singh advocating for a very long time, I'm afraid we are going to be internationalizing a situation with no benefit whatsoever to ourselves. If at the stage of Kargil the withdrawal came because of American intervention, it was because the red line of invading India had been crossed. I've been hearing this expression red line and this army expression enough is enough over and over and over again for the last 1 week. But I'm never able to get a clear idea on what constitutes a red line. And I'm afraid this dependence upon international public opinion, when international public opinion in the case of Pakistan is resulting in a stronger embrace of Pakistan's defense requirements by the Americans in the context of their proposed withdrawal of forces, at least armed activity from Kabul, sits very, very ill with what was being suggested just now. We have to deal with Pakistan bilaterally. We can bring whatever proof we have of whatever we wish to say. But you cannot expect engagement to take place on the basis of a unilateral conclusion, which you are asking the other side to endorse. And if they fail to endorse it, to saying we've drawn a dry line, we're going to take smart action, I don't think it will serve any purpose at all in terms of international public opinion. If we return these people, it will be generally regarded as an extraordinarily petty act. And I do believe that what we should be doing is using the track that has been opened and is being used. I want the kind of restrained responsibility which the army commanders on the spot had displayed, as well as the kind of restrained manner in which the government of India has reacted, because that is the only mature way in which countries who are engaged with the lives of 1.5 billion people can behave. And I do not think this riding on emotion and wanting to somehow demonstrate that we have done something without it at all being clear as to what is a smart move. I am absolutely sure there are hockey players, I'd be surprised if there weren't, who have some army connection. There may be others too. But it's impossible for us to tell a team that you can play half your members but not the other half. I see no effective difference between the position taken by Mr. Nagarkar and the position taken by Ambassador Singh. It amounts to the same thing, but said in different ways.
Mr. Navreka, what does the Shiv Sena now intend to do? You've staged a protest at the Mumbai Hockey Association. There are 4 Pakistani players who are part of the Mumbai Magicians team. Will these players be allowed by the Shiv Sena to play in Mumbai, or are you saying that you will never allow them to come into Mumbai and play any of the matches over the next few days?
Well, unfortunately, due to the audio disturbance, I've not really been able to hear Mr. Manishankar Iyer clearly. But whatever I could make out, I would like to respond quickly to Mr. Iyer. Number one, I would like to remind Mr. Iyer that this practice of not allowing a nation to play in your country is not unprecedented practice. If I would do that, South Africa as a nation was also boycotted by the entire world against racism practiced by that country in its policies with regards to cricket. Number one. Number two, the harmony concept is definitely not a Congress genius concept which he is talking about, and it is known to the world at large that war is not in favor of anyone. It does not favor or benefit anyone. So of course it is in the interest of everyone to maintain harmony and to have a peaceful dialogue. But when this doesn't work out, the question is what happens next. And war certainly is not the only option. It is your failed foreign policy, the failed foreign policy of your government, that makes you believe that everyone is suggesting war as the only option. You have several other options. For instance, to isolate a state and make them understand that till they don't mend their ways, they will not be accepted. And that is certainly something which we would advocate.
Ambassador KC Singh, one quick final comment. Yes, go on, Rahul.
Yeah.
Quickly.
First
let Rahul finish, sir. Ambassador Singh, let Rahul finish his argument.
Yeah.
Insofar as the Shiv Sena is concerned, we've already stated that we will not appreciate any Pakistani player or artist to perform here until Pakistan mends their ways. And I think that is one of the ways we can send a strong message across to Pakistan.
Okay, clearly diplomatically we are not making much progress. Ambassador KC Singh, the army chief, spoke today, said India reserves the right to retaliate militarily and will do so at a time and place of its choosing. Do you think that's the option that India now needs to exercise soon?
Well, when he was pushed to define that, he said it's being left at the tactical level. So I think it's more to appease public opinion in India than any particular military action that is envisaged. He said it's being left to people at the core or the division level. Now, to come to the international law question, as a student of international law, I just want to respond to what Mr. Iyer said. There's a difference between internationally politicizing an issue, which is, say, going to the United Nations Security Council, and the other one is a question of applying international law. After all, what are we doing in case of Sir Creek? We are bringing in laws of the seas. What did we do in case of the Indus Waters Treaty? When we had a disagreement with Pakistan, we went into arbitration in Switzerland. There is a provision in the convention, Geneva Convention, for us to conduct an inquiry and for Pakistan to conduct their own inquiry. And if we disagree, we can get an umpire, and the umpire is not the UN. The umpire is some distinguished person that we can agree upon, who then decides who's better off. So this is how countries settle their differences. India has had such a bad shock in 48, having gone to the UN erroneously on Kashmir, that forever the Congress party feels that anywhere where you go to international law, it is internationalization. It is not. It's instruments of international law which should fix Pakistan and tell them where their army is in breach of their commitments, their treaty commitments.
Okay, I'm going to leave it over there. Between unending appeasement and nuclear escalation lies several diplomatic and military solutions and options. The Indian government seriously needs to look at leveraging some of those instruments of diplomacy and military to ensure that Pakistan gets a message that it cannot get away by provoking us endlessly. For the moment, Mr. Manishankar Iyer, Rahul Kanwal, Ambassador KC Singh, for joining us on the Center Stage Face Off tonight. Thank you very much.